We're alive.
Oh, and here we are. We have a different countdown this time.
We got, believe it or not, we on the YouTube channel they demonetized us. So all the revenue that we were generating from that from our massive YouTube audience, all
Yes.
that money we were generating from that massive YouTube audience was taken back. I mean, more effort for them than. But anyway, so whatever.
Okay. So there we go.
We
So
used a different countdown. So.
shorter countdown time. Anyway,
Well,
welcome
we're ready
everyone.
to go anyway.
And I guess if you're here and watching us, you know who we are. Anyway, we're planning to talk about sort of Easter, the great 50 days of Easter. But before we start, I think it behooves us to mention that somebody well known to many people who would know, well known to us, Father Leo Boone, who was formerly pastor at St. Anne's Parish in Glace Bay for about 10 years. So Leo passed away on Monday, just this past Monday. So certainly want to offer condolence to his family and I think a lot of people who knew Father Leo, parishioners and other people. So just to let everyone know sort of the details that tomorrow evening, and that's May the 5th at 7, there will be the prayer vigil. And then that's at 7 o'clock, and then church will be open till 9. And then Father Leo's funeral will be on Friday, this Friday, May the 6th at 2 p.m. All of this at St. Anne's Church in Glace Bay. So
for those people that don't know what the prayer vigil is, could you explain to them?
Sure. So people may be familiar with that, even going to wakes for people that they know or for relatives. So what we would do is we'll have a little bit of music, so a hymn, some reading from the scriptures, and there'll be a homily, just a short reflection, and that's it. Basically, it's basically a short prayer service. That's really what it is. And vigil, because it usually takes place in the evening. So the evening before the funeral. So there we are. And I think, Shawn, I think you're frozen. So I guess I don't know if we're both frozen, but I guess I'll have to carry the ball a little bit myself here. Anyway, so. So vigil, that's in the evening, and then the funeral on Friday. Oh, there you are. You're back. You kind of froze there for a second.
Yeah, I saw you frozen too, so I don't know.
Hopefully okay, well, there we are. Well, that's suspended animation. That's probably best with us. But anyway, so here we are. Last time we talked about Lent and Holy Week. So the next, liturgical and logical procession is talk about Easter.
Yeah, and we logic is we follow logic.
Yeah, logic. Yeah. Logic is more by happenstance than anything else when it comes to us, right? Case in point, if anybody was at Mass at St. Anne's last Saturday at 4:15 p.m. And
contrary to rumor, I did not quit.
So what happened? Anybody could see. It's what happens when you and I are left unsupervised. Yes. That's what happens anyway. So Easter, I thought a kind of an interesting place to start would be the name itself. I know you don't want to get me started on this, but
it's not like I can stop you.
Okay, so that's true. So English, of course, again being a Germanic language, we have the word Easter, which comes from a Germanic word Ostreb, which was actually it was a festival, a pagan festival, and they just kind of took over the name, so celebrating Easter, because in the Romance languages, nothing to do with dinner and a movie, but the Romance languages, of course, that come from Latin, um, they have a different, the origin of their word for Easter comes from a different place. So a couple of languages that I have a little bit of familiarity with, like in French, we call Easter La Pâque, or in Italian, Pasqua. And that comes from Passover. So the Jewish feast of Passover. So, and we tend to use that word in English. You'll hear this word in the liturgy during Lent and Easter. We'll hear that word Paschal. So the word Paschal, that it comes from the Hebrew, which is Pesach. Pesach is in Hebrew is the word for Passover, and so I think, and I don't know if I've done a very good job of that with just in the parish, liturgies, because we do hear that word Paschal a lot of times when it comes, for Lent and Easter, and I don't know if people really are familiar with that word. But so it's all to do that with Passover, and of course, the feast of our Christian feast at Easter always takes place very close to the Jewish feast of Passover. And if you, of course, read the Gospels, which we do at this time, and you read the accounts of the Passion, which we do on Passion Sunday, Palm Sunday, and Good Friday, you'll see that the whole trial and crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus takes place at the time of the Jewish Passover. So the Last Supper, of course, is the celebration of that, the Seder meal, where even down to our own day, our Jewish brothers and sisters celebrate this feast of Passover, which is the highest of holidays in the Jewish calendar. So that's just a little bit of the etymology of the word, anyway. So I get tied up in that sometimes.
Well, because it's funny, of course, because you hear invariably at this time of year, if you're on social media, and I know you don't spend a whole lot of time, if any time, on social media, and
not much.
I admire you for that. As somebody that seems to be addicted to it, but you'll hear all these different things, and sometimes I think people think that the Bible was written in English, and that all the terminologies that we use are all English. So if an English word is close to another ancient word, it must mean that forever and a day, that's where that came from. And more often than not, as you just explained, it's kind of happenstance more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because English as a language is nowhere near as old as the Bible.
It's certainly not. Yeah. So and I think, with the word from the Romance languages, that certainly highlights, again, the closeness of the relationship that we as Christians have with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and if, especially if you think about like our celebration of Easter, the actual liturgy of Easter, the Easter Vigil, which again, there's that word vigil, right? So which takes place, through the night on Holy Saturday, and it begins close to the beginning. The liturgy of the word is a little different than the regular Sunday Mass, right? Because it begins with 7 readings from the Old Testament, from the Hebrew Scriptures, and in the middle of which is the account of the escape of the people of Egypt from slavery, or the people of Israel, sorry, from their slavery in Egypt. And that's the one reading amongst those 7 Old Testament readings that you can never leave out during the Easter Vigil, because it's central. Because of course Jesus, especially in the reflection, in, say, like the letters of Paul and John, and those, as they're called, those Catholic letters, um, that we see in the New Testament, Jesus has become the new Passover. So the first Passover is the liberation from slavery. That Jesus, the new Passover, liberation from slavery to sin and death. So um, that's how that goes. Now, one of my hobby horses is this, and there's a reason for that. It's because the season of Easter which lasts for 50 days. It goes at the great 50 days of Easter. And
longer than Lent.
Yes, you know what I'm going to say next, right?
You can eat chocolate longer than you can have to give it up.
So Lent lasts for 40 days and Easter lasts for 50 days. And every year, probably for the last 29 or 30 years, at the last Mass of Lent, I have said this to anybody that's there and cares to listen. I don't know how many people care to listen, but anyway, this is it, right? That we've come now to the end of Lent. The Easter Triduum starts tomorrow, and don't forget, there's a reason that Lent lasts 40 days and Easter lasts 50 days, because there's no resurrection without a Good Friday, but this is the great celebration. I mean,
everything else is pointless without it.
And that's what St. Paul said, right? If Christ has not been raised from the dead, then we are the most unfortunate of all people. Right?
Rarely am I using the St. Paul. Well,
yeah, you're seen as traveling in the same circles as the great St. Paul. That's right. So anyway, well, that's listen. I know I can say this to you. Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yes. I rely on that.
So do I. So that's anyway. And I, part of it is, and again, it's like the apostles, right? It's I find it's fascinating, reading in the Gospels these accounts of the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus, when Jesus meets, apostles, disciples after the resurrection, and it's pretty well universal that in the first instance, when they meet the risen Jesus, they don't recognize him. Even people who are very close to him, and I think that's one of the reasons, for this 50 days for us, I've been using that word a lot lately, but it's sort of to appropriate the sort of the meaning and the significance of the resurrection of Jesus in my life, in your life, and whoever, because it's like any other mystery, right? You can probe it and you can dig deeper and you can come, right, but you'll never come to the end of it. But you can always draw something new and something better from it. Yeah.
Well, eschatology, right? Like that whole there's no way you're going to know. We won't know until we know what we're talking about until we're there, right?
Yeah.
Which means anybody. But it's funny because if you do any study of that, you like you said, you get those glimpses and the road to Emmaus that they didn't recognize them, and what's that mean for the resurrection of the body? Because I hope, if I believe in the resurrection of the body, I hope I get my 25-year-old body, not my 58-year-old body, right? But but you get glimpses there. Is the body your body? Is it a different? We were talking about that in class once, and a deacon who shall remain nameless, Duncan. They asked, well, how will we recognize one another? And Duncan said, well, we'll recognize Shawn. He's the one that won't shut up. So, but it's that isness that what makes you you, even if everything else goes right. So there's these little glimpses there, and I take great comfort in the fact that there are those glimpses there. That this is not. No, we don't know the final picture, the final outcome. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but there's enough pieces there where we can see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's what you said before. You'll know it's the 25-year-old body, not the not the almost 60-year-old body, by by the absence of creaking and aching. So that's
I
right.
don't want this shoulder in heaven.
So, but it's a little bit like that scene from. Are we allowed to talk? Are we allowed to talk about movies? I guess so. It's allowed.
Oh, sure, we'll talk about them as long as we don't run a clip.
Okay. It's like that scene from It's a Wonderful Life when after Jimmy Stewart has said um, the encounter with the angel, and he said that accident when he's a kid, and it's left him deaf in one ear, and all of a sudden he said that encounter where he hasn't lived, right? He's come out, and all of a sudden he said, "Oh my God, I can hear out of this ear," So anyway, but it's really, I find this just fascinating. I mean, and you just have to sit in contemplation of this. These people who knew Jesus so well, but after the resurrection, at first they don't recognize him. So what does that mean? Like what this they talk about Jesus as that's having this the glorified body, and then he either does something or says something. This is that case where Mary Magdalene who encounters him, and he says, and finally he just says to her, Mary, just calls her by name, and all of a sudden she knows, who he is. But it takes them a while just to kind of figure out, what's happening, what's going on. Like you preached on this text last weekend and did a very good job.
Apologize to anybody that was there.
No. But it's that line, when Peter decides he's going to go fishing and the others, and then Jesus is there on the shore. And they said, none of them asks him, who are you? Because they knew it was Jesus. Yes. Right? And it's kind of like that. Sort of, we use that phrase today. It's just sort of the elephant in the room. Is it they know it's Jesus, but they're just having a hard time making sense of what it is and what happened, and they have to appropriate that. They have to grow into that, and so why should it be different for people like us?
I take great comfort in Peter.
Yeah, well, and I quoted you last Saturday night saying that because you said so often Peter doesn't know what he's doing, and I said, well, neither do you and I. So that's right.
I take great comfort in
that. Yeah. So
if you think we get all the answers, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and it took them a long time. I think you did that very well, talking about that last week. If you're looking at Peter, Peter, first of all, as a fisherman living his life, as a disciple first, and then an apostle, disciple, a follower first, then being called to be an apostle, one who's sent out. Where they move from hearers of the word to doers of the word, and how they say, Peter goes from this to just ordinary guy, worker, then a disciple. When he becomes an apostle, that happens as they go along. Then somebody who denies Jesus, then somebody who reaffirms his faith in Jesus, and then finally, you see this guy that's grown to maturity in his faith when he can stand up. The authorities are forbidding him from preaching, and he stands up and says, "Well, I don't care. I have to preach." As you again, another movie you quoted from the Blues Brothers. I have a mission from God, and I have to. And but that's the kind of transformation that can happen. That happens to all of us. Now, I mean, usually it just kind of happens. So slowly, right? And we do. It's kind of an uneven passage, right? We make progress. We don't. We make progress. We go the other way. And anyway, so I just want to say this too about the 50 days. Then at the end of course, then 40 days, Feast of the Ascension. So Jesus returning to the Father, and there's something about that the Paschal mystery. See, I'll use that word. the sort of the mystery of the life, death, resurrection of Jesus, it doesn't come to its fulfillment until Jesus returns to the Father and gives this mission, the apostles, but says to them, "Know that I'm with you always." Right. So and it says that at the Last Supper, right? I'm going away, but I'm not leaving you alone. I'm with you. I'm going to send you the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, and so Saint Augustine, many years ago, he says this, kind of reflecting on the Ascension. He says, when Jesus was born in time, when Jesus was born here on earth, well, he never really left heaven, and when Jesus has ascended after his resurrection, he's never really left us. He's still here. And then 10 days later is the celebration of Pentecost. And you say, again, because I like these things, right? The word, Penta, 50, well, 5, but yeah, so 50 days. And again, the Gospels will say, and the Acts of the Apostles, that they were gathered on Pentecost because there was a Jewish feast,
Called
50 days, Shavuot. So after the 50 days after Passover, it was just kind of a sort of a harvest festival, but also it's a celebrating of the receiving of the Torah. That's a great word in Hebrew. Not that I know a lot of Hebrew, but Torah, the law. So the first 5 books of the Bible, the books of Moses. And so, and of course, Jewish people have a very special reverence for the Torah. So those 5 books of the Bible, as should we all. But so this word Pentecost, again, it's sort of the 50 days, and again, so the gift of the Holy Spirit, that gift of the Holy Spirit that's with us. And I guess I'm allowed to quote from people, but I remember hearing a talk that was given by the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Rowan Williams, and talking about this, the significance of Pentecost, and we hear this, especially from Acts, that after this receiving the gift of the Holy Spirit, the apostles are going out and basically speaking in all the languages of the world. You get that list that's sort of the nightmare for any lector, to read all these the list of these ancient peoples that are there in Jerusalem, right? Parthians, Aids, and Elamites, people from Mesopotamia, and all of it. But basically, what they're talking about is there's people from everywhere there, from the whole world. And Dr. Williams says, what you see here is that what they're beginning to realize, what they're beginning to understand, is that the message of Jesus is for everybody, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are. This is a message for you. This is something, not just a message for you, but this is a message that you can understand. So it's a universal kind of thing. As usual, I've done most of the time. I've done too much talking.
Well, if they're relying on pearls of wisdom for me, it's
well. I've done a lot of talking. I don't think we have pearls of wisdom. So that's
but I will say this: that Easter is the lens through which everything has to be viewed, right?
Yeah.
Christmas makes no sense without Easter.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I think I mentioned that at Mass last week.
Well, I only quote the best people.
Oh yeah, no, at least at one of the Masses. I remember when I was a seminarian going along in Toronto on the bus, and we passed by a church. I don't know, it was a Christian church. I'm not sure what denomination. Anyway, they had the sign out front where you could put whatever message on the sign, and I thought it was very clever. It said the sign said, "From the people who brought you Christmas," and then there was a colon, right? So Easter. Right?
The sequel, right?
So somehow, there's a fulfillment in this.
Christmas never became a thing. Like the way the Gospels were written, the birth narrative came last.
Yeah.
right? Because
Well,
it didn't matter. Like when Jesus now before you start all
it,
the
it,
cards and letters, like
it matters.
not
Yes,
saying
it
Christmas
matters.
doesn't matter, but
It
what I'm
matters,
saying
right?
is it never took on the significant. Easter is what made
Right.
everything
So
else.
yeah, you're kind of looking backwards at everything. It's a little bit almost like the Saint Ignatius, the Ignatian examen, when you the consciousness exam, when you kind of look over your day and see what um, where you've experienced the presence, or where you've missed, where you've experienced the absence of God. Well, I think the idea with in the Gospels, the life of Jesus, it's kind of it's a retrospective look, because the resurrection begins to make sense then of everything that has happened, and everything takes on a new significance. And again, I don't know, maybe I'm too whatever colloquial in looking at this. My glasses seem to be crooked, but anyway, maybe that's just my head. The uh, like I can see, again, that's I'm projecting myself, but I think everybody does that too. But these conversations that apostles and disciples would have after the resurrection of Jesus, after they began to experience this, and say, well, my goodness, when that day that he said that, well, that's what it really meant. That's
It's
or
almost like reading an Agatha Christie book or watching the movie, and they're revealing
yeah,
the big reveal at the end, and then
yeah,
all the pieces that you saw during the movie that didn't fully make sense at the time,
yeah,
you go,
that's right. Yeah,
that's what
that's
happened.
yeah, that's
Right? And
right. That's right.
it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
And
not
I
comparing
think
it. I'm not comparing the
comparing
the gospel to Agatha Christie.
Agatha
Again,
Christie,
save your cards and
exactly.
letters.
Yeah, that's right.
Not heretic. Yeah.
So, so, and I think that's why I think Easter is so important, a feast day in the liturgical calendar, so important a feast day for the church, but for us personally, individually, such an important feast, because that's operative in your life and my life too, right? That we're called to see the events of our lives, mine, yours, everybody, the events of what we're looking around. And heaven knows there are lots of events that we're looking at in the world today, right?
Cool.
But it's sort of in the context of Easter, of the resurrection of Jesus, because that's a lens that needs to focus, our vision, mine and yours too, right? So that's it. Anyway, so wow, that's Easter. Um, that's not Easter completely. That's a little kind of maybe we might have come close to beginning to scratch the surface.
Ken Burns could do a 10-part series on Easter and still wouldn't
Oh,
scratch the surface.
exactly. That's right. It's sort of
For those of you who don't know who Ken Burns is, Google him.
yeah. Well, it's just kind of the Civil War. Anyway,
and
I think
I really want to keep these to a half hour as best we can.
Yeah, because
I
when
recently
we
started reading a book. Well, I got the audiobook, and it's called Masters of the Air, and it's about World War II the bomber campaign in World War II. I didn't realize it was. I've been listening to this audiobook for months. It doesn't seem to end. I don't want us to become that. Oh, I'd like to turn into them, but I don't have an 8-hour investment in me. So we're going to try to keep these to a half hour.
That's right. That's it.
I do have an ask for anybody that's watching, or whether you're watching live or if you happen to watch it later. If there's something you'd like us to talk about, drop us a line, because we don't need to know anything about it to talk about it. I mean,
exactly.
We built a career on that.
And let's say, folks, if you're going to do that, the soft pitch is preferable.
Yes. Remember who you're talking to.
Yeah. So the soft pitch, that's really about the level of our expertise.
Yeah.
So
nobody's ever going to say the great theologian and then I have my name. That sentence is never going to happen.
Not at all.
Okay.
Anyway, so happy Easter, everyone, and preparing for the Feast of the Ascension, and happy Pentecost. So anyway, so God bless everyone, and I guess I don't know if this is a promise or a threat, but I guess till next time. So
We'll talk to you soon.
okay.
Okay. Listen, bye from